2 weekends ago, I went to Faire Detroit, held at the Henry Ford Museum in Detroit, Michigan every year in July. It's a great event where lots of makers, hackers, tinkerers, and tweakers can get together and look at all the cool stuff that other people are creating. This is the second time I've gone to Faire, and as usual, there was plenty of interesting stuff going on. What you've been watching on the screen is a guy who makes old-fashioned kettle corn. Unlike commercial companies, which just douse the popped kernels in a caramel glaze, he pops the popcorn through the molasses-based syrup. You just saw him flip the popcorn out of the popper and into the storage side, where he then scoops it out into the bags. Moving on from there, I walked over to where the first robotics teams were stationed. There were at least 6 different teams there that I remember, and most likely more out and about. Several of the teams had their robots out and running, and there was even a competition arena set up in which they had teams competing throughout the day. I stayed and watched one of the matches, which you'll see here. Unfortunately for one of the teams, as you saw, the robot actually partially broke partway into the match. A few of the friends I came with had been talking, so I looked around a bit in that same area, and came across this funny little light tracking robot. It's really kind of entertaining watching this little bot swivel its head around and move to follow the green light. From there, I moved on to the next tent, and that's really where the actual making began, at least in the more explicit sense of makers, spaces, electronics, and 3D printing. The first section in the tent was a guy who puts together modded gaming PCs for veterans. He had a few different designs. Unfortunately, he was busy talking with someone else, and I wasn't able to learn any of the specs in the machines, but from what I could see, they looked pretty beefy. Sitting next to that same tent was a fairly large, possibly life-size T-47 snowspeeder from Star Wars. Next, I stopped in at the Make tent. From drones to Raspberry Pi kits, they had loads of cool stuff on sale. Ben Heck had a booth where he had several of his builds set out, including the fairly recent Raspberry Pi A+ based calculator, Apple II laptop, his Xbox One portable, his original Raspberry Pi based emulator gamepad, and a pinball table. In the next tent over, there was an automatic melon/pumpkin carver called PumpkinBot. That tent was about it for the outside stuff, but there was one last thing I checked out before going back inside. Power racing.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's green flag!
After the 30-lap race completed, those poor people's knees, I headed back inside and began to walk around on the show floor itself. One of the first things I noticed was the amount of 3D printing. 3D printers, more 3D printers, giant 3D printers. Oh, did I mention 3D printers? The 501st Star Wars Legion was there in all their glory. They make their own reproduction props and had several of their droids out and about. At one point, I saw 4 different droids all in the same area, 3 of which were R2-D2 units. One of the coolest droids I saw there was the BB-8 droid that Kurt Zimmerman had created. Once he gets it working, it will roll around on a ball with the head attached to the top via magnets. Very cool. Oh yeah, and one of his other droids says hi. I later headed back outside to go back into the make tent to buy something, and came across a reproduction of the machine from H.G. Wells' The Time Machine that blows bubbles. And on the way back, I saw this guy zipping around. I'm seriously jealous of that thing. Of course, there was other stuff that I saw but wasn't able to get footage of, but this is just a quick overview of my day at Maker Faire Detroit.